corporate architectural practice with WS Actons, Jurong Consultants, and CPG Corp. Sir has also worked with many international designers very closely, both in India and Singapore, on multiple occasions. Sir has practiced for more than a decade at CNT Architects, where he is the lead designer to win many prestigious design competitions in multi-speciality healthcare facility, institutional campuses, institutional building, hospitality campus, entertainment, and cultural center. Presently, architect Suman Paul has his own practice, DKP Architects, along with two other partners. Sir has designed and executed one of the world's most sophisticated underground nanotechnology lab in Bangalore with CNT and was awarded as the Architect of the Year 2013 in the Architecture Plus Design Awards ceremony in Bangkok for one of the prestigious corporate headquarters design. He has also designed one of the largest hospital buildings for which he has received an award from IDAC in January 2020 for the most sustainable project, and the same project is also presented as a research paper called Building as a Therapy in a design conference at Manipal University in March 2020. Sir also delivers lectures to different architectural schools and presents his architectural research and findings at different public gatherings such as Indian Space Research Organizations, scientist meets, etc. Today, Suman sir will be presenting on the topic Multiplicity in Design. We request you to address the session, sir.
Thank you so much, Neha. Thank you so much for a lovely introduction and inviting me to be here.
Our pleasure.
And all of you who are spending the whole day, I believe all of you have a very good sessions before this. I just could catch up a little bit part of what Rajiv was talking about. It was interesting. So yeah, so welcome back. So let's begin. I will start sharing my screen and then I will just talk through that. Just let me know, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So do you see the change in the screen?
Absolutely.
All right. So it's working fine then.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Welcome back again and let's begin. So I'll be talking about multiplicity in design, and I will tell you why I have chosen this topic to emphasize. So what does it mean and how it affects us? So basically I'll be covering 4 different chapters in the talk. So first one would be nature of space. Second one would be ordering of space. Third one would be sense of place. And the fourth one would be place in the universe. So I'll go one by one. Now, as Neha had mentioned that what kind of background I come from. So I'd like to just go on it once again to uh, give you a little more insight and my present position in practice. So I graduated from RV College of Engineering, Bangalore in 2002, early 2002. And after that, I worked till 2008 in 3 different organizations. WS Atkins, which is now is called as Atkins, which is UK based. Then I joined Jurong Consultants, which is Singapore based, and then CPG Consultant, which is also Singapore based, but primarily an Australian company. So I got to work with a lot of international designers who were doing extremely good at that time. For example, Tom Wright, who designed Burj Al Arab in from Atkins, and then CPG, the Timothy Xiao, who was the father figure in Singapore for high-rise residential buildings. So people like that, I could see very closely how they work and what kind of designs they were doing and what kind of philosophies they were talking about. That helped me greatly being a very young architect and getting into the profession. So it went on for a couple of years till 2008, and then I did a shift in a very, very hardcore design-centric practice. CNT Architects, all of you might be knowing, it is based in Bangalore, and CNT is the oldest design practice in Bangalore. We few years back we just celebrated 50 years of CNT, so that is old it is, and that kind of legacy it carries till date. And everyone practicing architecture in India, CNT is looked up to with a very, very high academic quality, not only its professional standings. So I worked there, I had the good fortune to work there for 10 years, and I learned a great deal of architecture from that. And 2018, couple of my college mates, we joined hands together and formed our own company called DKP Architects. So presently, we are exploring many interesting stuff there. So this is the kind of broad uh, career graph, so to say, so till date. And within this time frame of almost 18 years, I have the fortune to work on different kind of typologies. Uh, so these are the kind of prototypes and typologies I have worked on. Now, this brings interesting part to see the kind of schooling one goes through in their life. So I would say that when I joined RV, that was my second schooling. So that means where is the first schooling? I think first schooling was my childhood with my parents, with my school, with my friends, with my relatives, with my all the surroundings, all the memories were my school one. And when I joined RV, that was my uh, primarily the education system in a professional grade. So that's the schooling too. And third schooling happened when I was practicing with those international firms, which taught me many, many great things in life, how to handle projects, how to do a lot of things in architecture, which still helps me, and I will cherish them forever. And the fourth schooling happened for me in CNT, where I could look up to architecture from a very, very different perspective, because CNT is known for its in-depth design practice. And I could merge my corporate learning along with the hardcore design practice throughout these years. And finally, 2018, when I started my own practice, that's a new school where I'm a student of now. So that's the school 5 still running like you. So yeah, so that's the kind of upbringing what I have. So all the things what comes out, these schoolings have a great, great influence on them. And that brings a very vivid understanding of the discipline, if we consider architecture as a discipline. And the question always we seek as a designer or as an architect is, what is architecture? And to me, architecture is nothing but is a way of life, how I live, how I love to see other people living, and making the world comfortable for everybody. So that's a way of life, the way I look at it. So if I say so, then life is very colorful, life is very vibrant, life is all over, within me, outside me, everywhere. So based on that, life has many, many aspects, many, many facets to it. And since life deals with primarily multiple aspects, that tends to be uh, a multiplicity, or so to say a pluralism, and that reflects in my design, because everything I relate to life. So each and every design I take up or get involved, uh, life becomes the primary factor for that. So that is the understanding, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to express this in this forum, so that I believe most of you are in school, and it might help you to get some kind of understanding. So, as I said, first chapter, let me talk about nature of space. And since most of you are students, I thought I'll quickly touch upon certain basic things with some kind of storytelling what I'm exploring at the moment. So mostly what I'll be sharing with you today will that is part of my the last school which I'm in, in my practice. So let's see the story of Pika. What is Pika? We'll figure out. Now, I was looking at my bunch of visiting cards. So, this gives me a feeling that this is not a single card. It's a bunch of card, and they together is forming a certain kind of form, but it originates with a point. And if you extrapolate a point, it becomes a line. And when you pull out a line, it becomes a plane. And when you take out that plane into multiple direction, it becomes a form. And that form contains the space. So now, if I look at this particular object, this is a three-dimensional object. So each surface of them becomes a pictorial space. So you look at them from a distance and with an angle, but you cannot inhabit them. It's a two-dimensional space, but still they are space. And if you look at this whole bunch, you see 6 surfaces, and you can look at them from any surfaces. You can turn them, put them however you want, but still you cannot get inside that and you cannot inhabit that. So essentially, this space becomes a plastic space. So plastic space is three-dimensional, but you can see from all around, but you cannot inhabit that. So since I am involved with multiple organizations at the moment, so I have a couple of bunches like this. So I was thinking, now in this, certain informations are kind of common. Say my name, my phone number, my email IDs, etc. What is variable is those organization names and the websites of them, etc. Few of them. So can there be a method where I can compress all of these into one? Then I figured out, yes, I can put all of them into one, taking certain commonalities from all of them, and whatever are variables, I put them separately. So that was one point. And at that point, I was designing a carry case for my drawing instruments, say like a pencil or pen or etc. And the material I chose, leather, a white color leather, very thin leather. And I wanted to be very seamless and very simple. So I was designing along with a manufacturer of that, or more to say a craftsman, and we came up with this design, and this was the final product. So this is made out of one single leather piece, which is cut and fold to its shape and size as per the requirement, and it is tied back only with one single stretch of seam. The stitch what you see, just one line of stitching, and even the locking mechanism also, it's inbuilt, just a cut and groove, and you just insert the flap into that and it is locked. So this is very simple. And then the whole idea of incorporating multiple things into one, I was thinking how to get rid of that from my visiting cards. So what I did, I embossed that common visiting card at the back of my pen case. So now I do not print my visiting card anymore for any of the organizations I'm attached to. So I carry this instrument case, which is very handy for me, and I need it everywhere. And if someone asks for my contact details, I just flick through this and tell them or request them to take a photo, and it stays with them. So whichever way, very minuscule, but still helping the planet in some way. So if you just open up the flap, it's like this. You can hold it in your hand as the scale. It's very tactile. You can feel it. You can rub on it and you can get the texture. You can feel the gradient and the smoothness or the roughness. It's very handy. You can keep in your hand or palm, or you can keep in your pocket or bag, whatever. And this is how, once you open the total flap, you can keep a couple of instruments there. And there's the inside requirements, and this is the outside aspect of that. So it's serving kind of multiple purposes. And now the time to decode the Pika. Pika is nothing but P plus CA, that is P for pen and CA for case. So that makes it Pika. So that's the story of Pika, and how one simple object, which is a plastic object, can cater to multiple aspects. So one object and multiple aspects leads to multiplicity in design. So moving on from there, let's see so far I have talked about pictorial space and plastic space. So now, if we talk about architectural space, which is in 3 dimension, and one can inhabit that, actually you can get inside that. So this is very, very recently done, and all of you know that when we were locked down in the month of March, we had no choice but to work from home. And everywhere, everybody started doing that. I also did that, and I realized in my home, I do not have a proper setup where I can sit down for the whole day and interact with people and do a lot of work. So I was just pondering over that, what to do, how to overcome that. Then there were a lot of ideas running across, and then I boiled down to one and decided to make it happen. It's called Soho. Soho is nothing but small office, home office. And this concept is not new. This concept is there for a long, long time, maybe a couple of decades now, but across the globe in many countries. But nobody took it up seriously until the recent time, where we were homebound all the time. So now it should be a new way of life for a certain set of people, not everybody across the globe. But for those people who are opting for that, will be a great help if they can get into certain kind of design environment, because design matters a lot. So in my home, I had a very tiny room to spare for this purpose, which is not a proper square or rectangle. There are some sort of projections, a little odd. So keeping them aside, I'm getting roughly around 6 feet by a little less than 9 feet as a dimension. And in that room, in one wall, I have a door, and the opposite wall has a window. So that created further limitations. So I was looking into the possibilities of exploring multiple activities, since I'm going to stay there or use that space for a long time. Uh, uh, and my wife also joins me sometime, because she was also working from home. So we had to create a space for two of us. And this was the space availability, and we had a huge requirement, set of requirements. So we started doing that, and I looked into it from a perspective where it again starts from a point, and I extrapolated that into lines and planes and volumes and forms and space finally. And within that space, what all could I accommodate? So I came up with the very simple solution of creating a L-shaped tabletop with a very minimal support system. And then to frame that up, uh, I introduced two tall towers or bookshelves on wheels, which can be moved here and there across the home, across this room, whatever I want to configure. And then I had a bunch of books which could be accommodated in the shelves. So I placed them above the tabletop surface on the wall. And then this was the kind of instruments and gadgets and shelves and books and etc. All the objects will come in into that tiny space. And then chairs for two. And then this is the whole configuration what you can get. So you can see, if you consider that as a square, only one portion, like a two interlocked L, one L is completely utilized and another L is kept completely free for different kind of activities. Now let's see what all we can do with this. So there's a wooden flooring, and the shelves and other stuff are made out of plywood and very simple stuff. So this is a regular scenario where two people can sit down and work. And this is a scenario when two people can come together and kind of discuss something like studio setup. All of us are familiar with this. And then probably one person is working and another person is looking at something and discovering something else. So, and at times we do yoga. So that is the reason I had to keep that one L free. And at times when the yoga stretches are a little more, so what I do is I remove the tall cabinet at the back and then push it on the other side, so that that whole flange is free for this movement. That helps greatly. Then a lot of space available for the meditation. So on the same mat, we can do yoga and meditation. And then we are into pranic healing. That's a different subject, but we do pranic healing in this room, where two people are required, one healer and one patient. Then at times we can just unfold the small cot and you can rest over there. And then we convert this into a movie hall. since we can't have the movie hall running at the moment, so we brought that into our home. So we fix a projector and project on the wall. That becomes a large screen, and we have a sound system, and we have this movie experience in that small room. And then sometime we do a projection for the conference or something, some sort of a meeting. So that also takes place over there. Uh, I'm very interested in model making, physical model making, so I tend to do it over there. And then there is a window through which I can see a considerable amount of sky and a little bit part of the city. So that becomes a point of gauging for the stars and the city. So on a sunny day, we can look out to the city and figure out which building far away, 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers. On a clear sky in the night, we gauge the stars. So that is how it is. So finally it came up to like this, and you can imagine I'm sitting on this chair right now and talking to you, and that's my place, and that is where I work from nowadays, and that's the setup. So on my right hand side there's a window, and I'm facing my laptop, and you can see all of that. So that's how I stack up my books. Since the space is very small, I have to really pack it very tight, but it's fine. And that is the window I was talking about. I get to see a bit of sky and bit of city and greenery. Um, and that window being a window, it's not static. It's quite dynamic for me. So just if I turn my head and I get to see a dynamic photo frame like this, where time changes, season changes, I see the rain, I see the birds flying at eye level, I see cows grazing on the marshy land, I see birds are coming back in the evening on top of those trees. I see lights blooming. I see Diwali firecrackers across the horizon. I see clouds moving like a cover. I see a sunny day out there. I see Chinnaswamy Cricket Stadium, so I know when the match is starting, when it is ending. I don't hear the noise though. It's far away, almost like 12 kilometers. Um, so that is how it is. So within a static space, seemingly static space, you can find the dynamism, and this is what it is. This is what I mean. This is the whole setup of that room. You can see not a single inch is left out for anything, because space is very, very premium. So yeah, this is where my wife sits and work, and we have provisions for all the stuff what we need. And this is how we set up our movie theater at times. So that's our mini projector, and when we switch off all the lights in the night and the movie is on, this is the ambience what we get. And outside you can see all the lights of the city and sky. And I do all my college work and my office work, etc., from this corner. And this is the night. We can moderate the lighting system so that depending on your requirements, you can change the mood of that. So that is about Soho. So how a small space can be transformed, and it can be utilized and fulfill a lot of purposes. So it's just 6 feet by 9 feet room. And if you look at the list of activities, what you can do, and that is what truly I say, architecture is dynamic, architecture is plural, architecture is multiplicity in design. And probably this kind of echoes my topic today. Um, next move on to the next chapter of sense of place. Now, we talked about nature of space, we talked about plasticity, we talked about architectural space. Now, when we are talking about place, place is nothing but a certain conglomeration of spaces. Let's see that. We have been designing it. It's on site now. It's a very interesting house. It's called Thomas House. And when he came to me, he's a friend. When he came to me, he said there is a site. It's a small site. I said, okay, fine. How small? He didn't tell me. He said, I will send you a sketch. I said, okay, fine. Then slowly he revealed all the dramatics of the site. And what he told me first thing was there is a drain next to the site. I said, okay, fine. And that drain turned out to be pretty large. And this is the kind of road network. Across the drain, there is a very narrow walking path. And on the other side of the drain, there is a very dense squatter settlement in one of the neighborhood of Bangalore. and which is packed with really close buildings, and some are smaller, some are larger. And this is how it looks. And a narrow street, it comes down and ends at that point where the drain is. And that pink color is our site. So if you look at the dimension, it's 4 feet at the one top corner, and on the other side it is 18 feet, which is again faceted. Only decent size what we had was 30 feet long stretch, and on the other side it's 28 feet. So it initially it felt like it is just not possible to do anything there. But we didn't lose hope. We said, okay, fine, let's figure out what can be done there. And the dramatic start actually from that point, knowing your limitations and further adding to that, he said, and in fact, it is existing on the other side of the drain, there is a graveyard. So it's quite scary if you look at it that way. And there is a very nice, tall, big rain tree evolving from one corner of the graveyard, crossing that drain and almost hugging our site. So when I went to the site for the first time, I was thinking in my head what to do. But everything became crystal clear the moment I visited it for the first time. And then I came back and I started scribbling a lot of possibilities, because site is one thing, then requirement is one thing, and then the landscape, what and where you are building in, it's a major thing. And then what would be your response to those factors is the final manifestation of the design. And being it so small and seemingly unmanageable to build anything, it was really challenging things to do. So I was just thinking through what to be done, and then finally figured out something which finally made some sense. So we thought, okay, this could be the built mass, but we are not going to do this. So what we thought, we will create dynamism within that small space, because this is going to be occupied by almost 7 or 8 people. You can imagine. And the criteria was we need to get 4 bedrooms and all other stuff, which was over the sky. But we still had some hope to do something meaningful. And we thought, okay, so what we can do is we will create a central volume which is common for everybody. And that will be kind of democratic space or place where everybody has to go through that, and everybody will be connected to each other through that volume, through that space. And that will be the only place where people can come together. And that will bring them into that space as a magnet. So that became the hub of the will. And then, since the tree is the governing factor of this prevailing landscape, uh, which is the life of the landscape over there, we decided we will knock off certain portion from there at that corner, and we bring it down to create a ground zero over there, even though it is not sitting on the ground plane. So we elevated a garden sort of a thing, from which place you can actually touch and feel the tree, and it is actually that. Then, so that became a kind of goal to reach when you're coming from outside through that democratic place at the center of the house. You somehow climb up and then reach to that garden, which is like a huge relief. Like if in a large house, if you have a courtyard at the center, everybody or everything tends to go towards that. So that's the gravitational force it has. So for this house, we decided, okay, the gravity shifts over there, and that gets translated to the tree over there, and that is how you connect from the built environment to the landscape outside. Even though you do not own it, but you can still have it in your life. So that is what preferably I call that borrowing and lending in architecture. You can borrow which doesn't belong to you, and you can lend to others what you have. So that is how you collaborate unspokenly and silently, and you live and you coexist. Exactly, that is what we applied here, that same logic. and we came up with this. So this is the kind of thing what we came up with. So we kept the circulation part very, very slick and slim within that volume so that we get the openness as much as possible. So there is only a flight of staircase and a straight bridge which connects both the side of the houses. And that is how people move, and kids are able to go to the terrace to touch the tree. So we color coded that internally, even the flooring. So we decided all the habitable spaces like the living, dining, kitchen, and the bedrooms, they will become red. And all the common areas like corridors and bridges and staircases will become yellow. And the garden will become more of green. So that is how we engage, so that visually also you are always informed about those spaces, and you understand the meaning of that, and it stays with you at the back of your mind, even though it is not very obvious thing to tell. So and finally the envelope came out like this with a huge window, because we had to minimize other windows, because there is a drain, and at times when the water is flowing it may not be very suitable to keep a large window towards that. So, but to visually connect all the internal spaces to the tree, we created a huge opening over there. So these were initial sketches and explorations at various levels. And then this was the site when we visited. So that is the actual tree size. You can figure out how big is that. And that actually comes and hugs our site at that fag end, which is just 4 feet wide. We made a couple of models for this, and tree was the main feature. Um, so that had to be there because this house exists because of this tree. Otherwise, it would have been something else. So everything evolved around that. The whole thrust, the whole gravity system works towards that tree from every corner of this house. So how the light falls and behaves, etc. And then this is on site, it's still going on. I just managed to get few images. So this is the system what we adopted to create a democratic volume, where you have very thin bridges to cut across that and to reach the other side of the house, and a very slick kind of system of the staircase with a very, very uh, transparent screening for security purpose of the staircase and the bridges. So this is the color coding what I was talking about. It's done in oxide. We used yellow for the common areas and red for the uh, personal areas, for the rooms, etc. So this is the terrace. It's coming up like this, and if you go towards the tip of it, you can actually can get hold of that tree. So these are the kind of fancy details we could work on, because we were improvising all these things at site, and we were uh, making it as minimal as possible. And as a result, we could get the staircase, which is just 2 inch thick, not even 2 inch, little less than that, 42 mm. It's a composite structure, and the whole railing system also derived in a certain way, in a rhythmic way, which does its job and became part of the house as a sculptural element, and gives a very good sense of protection for everybody, even though it sits very lightly and feels almost not there. It's almost invisible. So from the ground plane, where you have the very tiny living and dining space, but by the virtue of this multiple volume and a different kind of layering system, it feels really, really large. And adding to that, this kind of thrust, which kind of pulls one out from their room and brings out to the terrace and hug the tree, and the vice versa. So the landscape sometimes travels inward, sometimes pulls you out towards outside. So that's a kind of very rhythmic system what we could achieve finally. And then this is the kind of light and shade play throughout the day. And even though if you are at ground plane, you are aware of that tree, and wherever you go, that doesn't leave you alone. It travels with you. And this is the kind of sense of direction what you get from one place to another. Even though it's a very small space, but we had to be designing it very, very systematic way, so that it becomes very crisp and doesn't hover on you, so that it sits very quietly and gives you a lot of room to be with yourself. So at every level, from every room, you have large openings to look out and be connected with the outside nature, be it is that tree or the other trees and the sky and the light and shade. And while you walk on those bridges at different levels, you feel like you are actually walking through a park, because you can see the graveyard on the other side, but it doesn't seem very haunting. And because of that, a lot of big trees are existing over there, and the foliages are so that it gives you a feel that you are actually outdoor but protected. So that's an amazing feeling what we got when we were building this. So this is the volume. If you just look up, you get that. Very small, negligible size, but feels big. And exactly that is the point where I say design is very dynamic, and design is plural, and design is multi-directional. So probably this could be a good testimony for that, and I'm quite happy about this. So that's the story about the Thomas House, and it's just one place and many people living there, and that leads to multiplicity in design in many ways. The way they live, each one of them are individual, and they do their own stuff. All are different, and they come together into that one volume, and that leads to a very harmoniously designed democratic place. So that kind of very intriguing for me. And then let's moving on to another such example of Bloomingdale. It's a neighborhood school. It's a very small school. This is a kind of neighborhood, very dense, again in another location of Bangalore, very densely populated. So there are two old trees, and that brown color is our site, and that's the network of roads, which are pretty narrow, and even though they are vehicular, but pretty narrow and dense. And the site size is astonishingly small for a school. When we say that prototype name, it's 33 feet by 55 feet. And again, it seemed quite impossible at the beginning how to place a school there. You know, the moment you think about school, you think about large foreground, you think about a playground, you think about long corridors, nice staircases, big, airy classrooms, a lot of people jumping around, etc. We have gone through that in our life, and we have that imagery. But when I was looking at this, this came through a sense of social responsibility for us, and the kids were not so privileged to have those facilities, but we were questioning ourselves, why not? Is it that the size which governing all the matters, or something else? Then we were trying very hard to figure out what else can we give the kids, so that they also are not deprived of the facilities what we cherish in our life, from a perspective of a school. So we came up with a kind of mathematical formula. So we said, we recalled actually our individual school days, and we realized that maybe half the time we studied in school and rest of the half we played. And we used to go to school for the second half, not for the first half alone. So of course the first half is playing out the role now, but the second half played a major role over there. So that was like, adhesive to the whole system. And that kind of opened up our mind. So we realized, yes, school means you have to go there to study, you have to go there to play, because you make friendships over there, which is for the whole life. And that's very important. So we were trying to figure out, within this urban scenario, where we do not have land to our disposal, how do we do that architecturally? So we thought, okay, we will do it somehow, and we will give them some kind of facility so that it will remain in their memory forever. Um, so we said, okay, half study, half play. It might open up mind, and it does. And if the mind is open, then it creates a possibilities for the city, because these schools, any school for that matter, creates the future citizens. So we are the examples of that, all of us individually. So this was our starting point to design, and we exactly did that. We followed that equation, mathematical equation, with that sort of precision. We said half play, half study. So that pink color, what you see, that box is play. And the white box, what you see on the right, that is the study. Now, of course, you cannot do this. This is very, very simple and simplistic. We didn't want to do that. So we want to create something, some sort of a balance in between these two. So we started, as usual, all kind of explorations with that, and we came up with this final kind of form where we broken down something, we added somewhere, we taken out somewhere, and we explored a lot of things, and finally it came to this. So white box still remains as study, and the red outlined lighter shade box is the play. Now, of course, it's not a football field. Then how do you play? So this is the kind of enclosure we had to have. So then this became the scoop. If you look at this overall volume, you can figure out there is a scoop in L shape in terms of volume. And that scoop continues in a different way all the way up till the last floor. So this is where the multiple activities take place for the school and for the neighborhood, because the whole notion was we were coming out with the idea of how this neighborhood school, being in that neighborhood, can engage the students as well as the neighbors, so that the school exists in that landscape or that neighborhood where everybody can participate. The neighbors come into the school for a certain reason, and the students also can mingle with the whole neighborhood in a certain way. So in that way, opening up this volume, which is coming from within and inviting the other from outside to come in. So it was like a big a draw for that whole school. And we started figuring out what all can happen. So we figured out that the morning prayer, the morning assembly before the school starts can happen on that amphitheater. Most of the schools, it happens on the playground or on the corridors, etc. But here we said we will rake it up. It will happen on the amphitheater. And then a lot of cultural events, which normally a school keep doing. So those can take place over here. So that amphitheater is a way of staircase to going up, and at different times it becomes a gathering space. So that is how this whole volume is becoming a playful space. And you can convert it. If you want to watch a football match, you can just put up a screen and you can watch, and that becomes a movie theater for you. And we celebrate a lot of celebrations in our country, so it can become part of that. And then it can become a social ground for a lot of exhibitions, a lot of fairs, a lot of other stuff, congregational stuff. And actually, this school is also under construction, and this kind of events already have been taking place in multiple times. They have organized a crafts workshop for the students within this under construction building, and then kids were enjoying throughout the day. They organized blood donation camp within this campus. They did eye checkup camp in this campus, and all of those events took place in this volume, which is still under construction. So I'm hoping to see this kind of thing happening once the school is completely ready. Why not a music gig? The schools have it, so this school also can have. So these kids will remember that, not the textbook thoroughly. And Bangalore has a lot of local festivals, so that can actually flow into the space, which can hug the school and go out, even though there's a neighborhood program, but still it can include the school. So that is how I say that borrowing and lending is very important in architecture. The school is giving a visual relief to the neighborhood through this volume. The school is giving a physical space, however little it is, to the neighborhood. And the neighborhood is adding that character to the school environment, which is very, very important for those kids to grow up and remember later. So that is what we are exploring. And this was the model, what we did for that. So we broke down that staircase also in different parts. So one has a very regular smaller steps to for these kids to go up. And the other part is larger steps for the amphitheater seating. And while the space was open for those fair, I saw kids were jumping and running and going up and down continuously on those larger steps, and they are loving it. And this is how it is. This whole red portion, which comes out of the school volume and flows into the neighborhood, and the vice versa, the neighborhood flows into the school. And this is how playful we would like to see that. So that's about the tale of the Bloomingdale. That's a small neighborhood school, but school means it's a domain. It's a multiplication of places, but in association with many neighbors and different activities. So that leading into multiplicity in design. Then story of hospital. So when I took up this, I didn't have any prior experience of doing a hospital. When I got into it, it was a competition entry, and then I got the job because just because that I never did a hospital, and that is why I got the job. So, and once I started understanding it, it was very interesting, and I was able to kind of give certain things which they liked, because those kind of things were never tried in hospital design in India. Some of them are tried in abroad very minimally, but India has not seen this before. So this is purely an experiment, and client was also very supportive in that way. They said, okay, let's do it. If something path breaking we are trying, we should make it happen. And that is how it all started. And I started with the notion of creating a building as a therapy, because if you look at from a perspective of a patient, why someone would go to a hospital building? Because he or she is sick, not well, and already quite stressed out. So when you go to a hospital building, mostly in India, all over the India, you find a very gloomy environment, very dull, and your sickness kind of exponentially grow. uh, I wanted to break that prototype. I wanted to bring in some sort of cheer into the built environment, where a patient goes there and feels happy, feels confident that okay, I am into the right place, and this can heal me. If one can get that sort of response in their mind, they are already half healed. So the job of the doctors are much easier then psychologically. So we started with this building as a therapy, and then nothing is a greater therapy than nature. So we started with the tree of life, which is singular, and then we multiplied that. What happens if we create a garden of care where there are multiple trees of life? So that is how it came to being. And then we started thinking, okay, those garden of care can be multiplied and could be taken at different levels and can be connected through a connectivity corridor which is undulating from one level to another, and that creates a sort of network of path, and that I call that as path of wellness. Until then, there was no building. And once we formed up on this idea, then we said, okay, let's build around that. And that is how the whole design principles and strategies were built around this building. So those path of wellness, garden of care, life of tree of life, all were there, and then we were building around them. So that was fun. And then we studied a lot of things in sections, and then you cannot have a garden without light, without sunlight. So how to bring sunlight into the core of the building? Because this building being in an urban scenario, it's very close to your school. You can probably visit sometime once it is done. It's on the Kukatpalli main road from High Tech City. If you are going towards Kukatpalli, just before the Kukatpalli bridge on your left hand side, you will find this. It's almost structurally done. A couple of months more it will be done, and then the finishing work will start. So being this in an urban scenario, we did not have the luxury to create a campus as a medical campus where many buildings are spread out and you get landscape around them. Everything had to be compressed within one block, so it became a monolith which is very very heavy. It's almost like 20 lakh square feet, which was sort of unthinkable at the beginning. So in one hand, I was doing, Thomas House and the Bloomingdale School. On the other hand, this was overwhelmingly a bigger or a larger scale or a very different scale. But I stuck to the basic principle what I was believing in, and I still believe that there has to be a multiplicity. How do you bring in nature into this building is a sensibility grown out of that. So how do you connect that path of wellness with the natural light? That's the challenge, but that can be addressed. So it all started with that, and then in section when I was working out, so I just undulated that in terms of built form, and then there was a underneath built part of that, and then I floated couple of masses within that volume in order to get the light and proportion, etc. And then just to scale them properly, I I flanged a couple of walking bridges within that volume. And then I floated a couple of build forms above that. And then as a backdrop, there are a couple of more blocks at the fag end. So that's the kind of belly. Now, there's the sky and there's the relationship with the environment. Now, how to get that environment into the building? So I did it like this. So outside in the foreground there will be a lot of greenery, and slowly it will transfer inside the building to create that path of wellness, and which will anchor a lot of garden of care, and that slowly grows up at the higher level. And I cut that building into two parts, so that underneath part becomes very porous, and a lot of public activities, and above that there is a terrace garden completely through and through, and above that we have very densely packed room levels where all the patients will be stationed. So that is how the whole planning aspect went on. And this is the kind of packed up section what you can imagine, and that is how it is built now, with so many activities. There will be some 7 8,000 people accommodated in one point of time in this building. There will be accommodation of around 4,000 cars. There will be accommodation of 2,000 patient beds. There will be 300 outpatient department consultation rooms, and proportionately the staff of the hospital and etc. So it's a massive engine, so to say, from within. So the challenge was how to bring them together, how to get that multiplicity get simplified into one monolith, and still you are well connected with the nature at any given point of time, and you feel very confident, and you feel very comforted, and you feel kind of healed the moment you enter into the building. So this was that sort of exploration, and this was my journey of seeking how to translate the form of energy coming from outside or drawing from nature into the building. So you get light, you get air, you get any other form of energy, and how that influences your life within the building. So imagine that I don't have that central volume. What would have happened? So no energy flows into the building, so that's not great. So this clearly shows that any kind of building, whether it's monolith or campus or whatever, if you want to be connected with nature, if you love nature, or if that is your consciousness, you can achieve that somehow, and you can strive for that. It's not an easy thing, but it will come. It comes with a lot of persuasion. So these are my study sketches of the same volume in terms of section, while I was exploring the green coming in, sky hovering above, and the energy flow in one particular y direction instead of x and y. And in this, I did not use any single horizontal line. All the lines are vertical, and there are further ideas to take out from this to embed into the building information system. So yeah, that's another story. And this was the model of that, the cutaway section. Exactly, this is how the section looks like, and in terms of 3D also it is like that. So you have three major skylight system which brings in enormous amount of light and shadow play inside the volume, and then you have undulated pathway to go from one place to another. And then, even though it's a very densely packed, built up scenario, but you don't feel it just because they're fragmented yet very much connected through different systems. So that was the kind of exploration. This was the previous model where I was trying to gauge the kind of massing system. So how to break it down to the scale, and to create a sort of hierarchy in terms of visual effect, etc. So this is the study what we normally do in our practice. We do a lot of sketching, a lot of study, a lot of model making, a lot of understanding of different criterias and ordering of spaces, and this helps greatly for that. We study our study models in various conditions, different lighting conditions, different visual conditions, because you will be seeing this kind of built environment from all around. This building is very dramatic. If you go past Kukatpalli railway station, there is another second bridge. From the top of that bridge, you can start seeing that building. It will just look like one, rectangle. As you start coming closer to it, all these volumes will reveal to you one by one. So that means there is a play of hierarchy involved, how your eyes perceive a building or a built environment. That's very important. And we softened all of that through the vertical landscape. I'll show you how it is done. So basically, the site was rocky and it was sloping from the road level to at the fag end. It was almost like 12 to 13 meters of slope. And then we created the garden of care at the beginning where people land up. And then this is the monolith we had to deal with. So this is the volume we inserted at the middle of it, and all the translucent part has become the reverse. That become the built part, and the blue part, what you see, that is actually transparent and open. So in terms of outside scaling, we just divided that into basic a floor plan block at the bottom and then cut away on the top, and then we broke down the top into multiple parts, and you can see a terrace garden at the mid level, which is the starting point of the inpatient ward, so to say, and all the public activities actually goes down below that. So that is how it is derived. And then the garden starts growing vertically. So it's like you just walk maximum 8 meters at that level or any level, and you will hit a garden. So even though it's a large floor plate, just to give an idea about the scale, you can actually park three number of Boeing 747 aircrafts into this building footprint. Another way of looking at it is you can place a full-fledged football ground along with a running track around that into one floor plate of this building. So it is of that scale. So to break it down, and getting a garden just 8 to 10 meters of walking distance was a something which probably the country has not seen before. So we are hoping to make this as one of those kind of landmark or the benchmark, so to say, so that we take a lot of clues out of these, and we start seeing a lot of good architecture happening around us in future. That's the whole notion. And then how do you express it, how do you frame it, it's up to individual's choice. And this is how it is going to come up so far. And we were kind of sensitive about the north and south face. The previous image what you saw, that was north, so we could play with more transparency. The moment it came to the south and east, we started blocking them and control the sun and heat gain. And you can see the green, how it travels, how it breaks down the whole mass into two parts and then various parts on the top, making it lighter as you go up and then slowly merge with the sky. So that's the connection what I continuously seek in my any of the design approach, where you can connect the ground with the sky, and build form just falls at the middle, and that's the kind of facilitator, so to say. And how we do that, it varies from project to project. This is a very different characteristics if you look back to the Thomas House. So we can't even compare in terms of module of that. So but it's a very different experience based on similar principle and thinking process. So that is important to me in a practice, because when we talk about architecture, architecture is just not creating certain buildings or good looking build forms. It's about the practice, what kind of practice you are having and what kind of philosophies you are nurturing, and that will create a certain kind of culture in a long run. And I believe strongly on that logic. So every building what I undertake and I put my hands on, I try to see that how I can nurture those ideas and making it more viable and relevant to our life, and making it more accessible to people, so that they understand the value of good architecture. And when I talk about good architecture, it's the experiential architecture and not just mere existential architecture. That's another topic which I love to talk about, but not today. So this is the kind of build form. You can start already seeing the massing system. It's coming up. A long way to go from now, but still it's already out there. So in the evening, so from across the road, we could start seeing the massing breakups, etc. now. And this is the kind of section. It looks pretty busy. It is going to be, in fact, because so many dynamism, so many activities are happening. But it's stuck in such a way that you can figure out um, your path and your way very easily. So this is the other way around, where a lot of things are happening, and it's going to be extremely busy with few thousands of people moving around here and there, and we are trying to calm them down and making the building as friendly as easygoing as possible. And these are kind of overwhelming volumes, but we are trying to make it scale down for the human uh, eye level and figure, so that it becomes very soothing and comforting. So, in an hospital building, we studied and researched and realized that the visual connectivity is very important, as well as the connectivity with the landscape. So that itself heals a lot of patients very, very quickly. Because if a sick person feels that there is somebody around me who can take care of me, that's a psychological effect directly on him or her. So that helps a lot. So yeah, so that is some of the look and feel of inside, and that's about the um, complex story of the hospital. And this is, I say, this is a campus because it has got all the components of a huge campus put together in a monolith in a very different way, but still it behaves like a campus. So that means there are multiple functions in it, which directs to the logic of multiplicity in design. So coming to the place in the universe, so I'm going into this linear fashion because I'm trying to establish the logic of nature of space, starting with a point and then how it transforming into plastic space and architectural space, and slowly becoming a place, and the place is becoming larger, so large that it can create a footprint into the universe to a substantial scale. So this is a story about urban planning, and this was a competition entry, and somehow we got the second prize in that. And it's a place called Hebbal in Bangalore, if some of you are familiar with that. It's a very important junction in the city. The north and south kind of collides over there, and that's the only neck of the city to go from south to north, which connects to the airport at present. And the bridge what connects that north and south is so congested most of the time that it takes sometime 30 minutes to 40 minutes just to cross one bridge. So you can imagine the kind of pressure that point has. So that was the whole idea to start with this, to decongest that Hebbal junction in terms of traffic congestion. So we looked back many, many years, many, many decades, in fact. So Bangalore, as it's known as a network of lakes, so this entire area was a lake bed. And this is a huge area, maybe uh, from one end to the other end, it is like 20 kilometers or so. And this is the point of concern, what I'm highlighting here. There's the Hebbal Junction. And this is the map what showed in 2000, early 2000. And it was a lake bed. You can see the water is green, and all the green, darker greens are little patches of marshy lands just floating on the water. Underneath there was water. And this yellow dotted line is demarcating the whole land bank of that, and grows beyond that. And in fact, before 2000, it was completely water. And then what started to happen is it started getting filled up, and people started moving into that and encroaching slowly. You see, a matter of 6 years, it kind of get filled up at the middle. And then as we moved on, the one leg bed became into two smaller legs. And today's context, it's even more smaller. And that's the connector. From the right hand side is south part and left hand side is the northern part, and that's the narrow road or the bridge, which is the only way to connect both the side of the cities in a major way. So this is the map of Bangalore, and you can see the yellow is the road network and the blue bubble is the Hebbal Junction. And that kind of demarcates the start point of the IT corridor of Bangalore, so to say. So, and this red line you can follow, and it goes all the way to Electronic City on the other side of the city, which is filled with IT buildings all around that red line. So this is the zone for that IT corridor, and the whole Bangalore majorly depends on this. So you can clearly see a lot of people from south and west every day come onto this red zone to work and go back. So that is why Bangalore is one of the congested city in the world in terms of traffic. So this is the connector which connects from south to north through Hebbal, and this yellow line clearly demarcates. So there is a clear junction east to west and north to south. So we realized in this one particular junction, there are 42 different kind of movements in one junction, which in terms of traffic management, it's called monocentric problem. So everybody coming to that one point to go in different directions. So it becomes monocentric issue. So it's kind of coming together at one point and creating the problem larger. So as a proposal, what we proposed, why can't we connect these two lake beds again? As such, there has not much development happened in the filled up land, but we don't know in the future. But can we do that sort of connection right away and decentralize those that one junction into four parts? So basically, you create one larger lake bed and you touch that lake tangentially at four different locations from the four different directions, so that automatically you are dividing that 42 problems into four aspects. So it's much easier to handle that way. So we started with that. So Hebbal Lake and Nagavara Lake on the other side, we said let's connect both of them and create a combined lake bed, which would give around 350 acres of water body at the city center, which is not there in Bangalore anymore. But earlier it used to be there, and that is how Bangalore started. Uh, then we proposed certain amount of marshy land and island within that water body, which can measure up to 100 acres or so. And within that 100 acres, you can plant or do afforestation, and it can fetch us around 4,000 fully grown trees, which is like a massive thing to have in a city, which can change the microclimate of that region. And that is how Bangalore is known for garden city and lake cities. So why don't we revive that? And if we do so, then this red loop becomes like a 8 kilometers long jogging track, cycling track, and pedestrian track. And then as the outer ring of that, we can get around 9 kilometers of promenade, which can have a lot of food courts and other amenities. And it can become like a really public hub, so to say, for the whole city. And then this red loop becomes a one-way road loop instead of two-way road loop and crisscrossing with a different kind of signal system. We propose let's remove all signals. It will be signal-free junction, and you can join to this red loop in unidirection and come out from that in unidirection. So tangential movement will decongest this whole issue of traffic movement. And this is how it goes. You get in and get out from the red loop without having any traffic signal. And then there is a proposed metro rail which is coming up, which goes from east to west and south to north. Only that one line can cross over the water in a very thin way. And then we can have 5 different railway stations and major junctions, which can ease out the traffic even much, much more. And perhaps this could become one example where nobody would use their private vehicles to commute across this route, because you have the connectivity of metro rail, and that's a good sign for a prosperous city. So we thought and proposed a cultural hub, which is missing in Bangalore. Bangalore has population of 1.5 crores almost, and we do not have a full-fledged cultural center as such. We have sporadically one or two, a couple of more auditoriums, which are very less capacity. You can imagine 1.5 crores people, and we are not talking about or having a cultural center. It's a detrimental for the growth of the city. So we propose that over here. Why don't we have it? And then we proposed 13 numbers of crossover bridges, which can take one from one side to another side of the motorable road and get you, land you up onto the promenade directly without confronting any motorized vehicle. Then we proposed a multi-facility, a sports hub on the other side of the planning. And then we proposed there will be a lot of buildings coming up, and why don't we connect those building podiums above the road level and directly connect them to the podium? So creating an urban oasis and not utilizing it on a day-to-day basis and keeping it as a fancy place, that doesn't serve as a city planning. So we proposed, let all the buildings be connected and all the users come onto the promenade and occupy them, and that is how you create that buzz in the city, and that is how a city center can grow in numerous ways. And then you have public transport hubs at different corners of this place, and then this is how the real estate can grow, and they can enjoy these urban oases, and that is how you can commercialize that. And this is some sort of glimpses of how that whole center can grow. You can bring a lot of water sports activity, which currently is missing in the city, but people are thriving to have that. This is my favorite. You can have around 4 kilometer long cable car which runs from one corner to the other corner of the lake bed, and you experience never seen before stuff in the sky. And this is what I was talking about, the crossover bridges from point to point, and the motorized way is completely free out of that. And this is the kind of promenade you can energize that with a lot of activities: cycling, jogging, running, food courts, and people gathering for various activities, etc. There's the only bridge which cut across for the metro rail line, and that's about it. And then this is the kind of water body and the marshy land and islands which can be rich with marine life. You can go for fishing, you can go for water sports, you can go for picnic, you can go for island stay, tenting, camping, etc. So a lot of activities can be generated through this kind of planning ideas. And that was the whole point. Let's not merely solve an issue of putting a bridge or adding a couple of more traffic signal. That's very mundane. That doesn't improve life much. It just makes your journey a little smoother, and over time it will again get congested. But if you do something like this, which can be nurtured throughout many decades to come, maybe even centuries, and city can be benefited hugely out of this. And this could be one module which can be replicated with different kind of sensibility in the different parts of the city, and then the whole city can revive back to the culture of garden city and the lake city network. So that was the whole point of proposition of this. And we kind of wanted to create a ghat section, what you experience in Benares, in other places along the rivers in India. So if we can revive this kind of water body and Greenland, perhaps we can get that also. And that hugely contributes to the way of life of the citizens. And this is the kind of land, and you can get a lot of benefits for the kids and any kind of generations to come. And this is the cultural hub, which is a huge boon for the culture of the city. So this is the vision for the future, what we saw, and we would be happy to see this happening someday. So that is why I call that as an epicenter, Hebbal as an epicenter, and it can create a lot of ripple effect across the city, across the country, across the globe. And perhaps the next level would be the complete city planning. So that is why I chose this thread of discussion, so that I can show you from a handhold object to unmeasurable urban planning, and next level would be a complete city planning. And that is how you connect from with tactility from a small object to the whole universe. So whether you talk about Pika, it's an object and having multiple aspects, or you get into Soho, which is an architectural space filled with a lot of activities. Thomas House strives to become a good place for many people. Bloomingdale creating a domain for many neighbors along with the students. Hospital is creating a campus with its own functionality, with a sensibility to the nature and other stuff. And Hebbal being epicenter of the city, it engages all the citizens equally and regardlessly. And if you continue next level, as I said, it could be a city planning and then the whole country planning. And that is how we touch the universe, being at a very unit scale, how you connect. So to me, this is something like this, and we can talk about that. So I'm going back to my initial slide where I talked about architecture as a way of life. And since it has multiple aspects, it leads to multiplicity in design. So whether it's Pika, which is aspects, Soho activities, Thomas House is people, and Bloomingdale governed by the neighbors, Yashoda is functionality, and Hebbal is an engagement of the citizen. So this kind of reflects of my search in practice of architecture, how life can be multifaceted and leads to the multiplicity in design. So this is one point of interest what I take great pleasure of exploring day-to-day basis in my practice. Um, and this is the array of works what I have been doing for last 2 to 3 years time. And I just thought of sharing that with you so that it could create a certain level of architectural discourse and understanding way forward. And this is what I call as multiplicity in design. And thank you so very much for inviting me here and being with me for this last 1 hour or so, and giving me this opportunity to share my point of view with all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the excellent session by
Thank you.
sharing your work experiences and inspiring stories of your journey through every project. Also, inspiring students to do physical models right from the concept.
Yeah,
Sir, we have a few questions from the participants, from the students.
sure.
On behalf of the students, I'll be asking you the questions. Can we go ahead, sir?
Yes, yes, please.
So the first question is, what are the major issues one has to overcome while designing in such small areas? In projects, basically.
Okay. One thing I realized through my practical experience is it could feel like small at the beginning, but actually it is not small. So, however small it is, you can find certain ways. So, you need to always balance your understanding of design principles and then try to connect that back with your design, what you are handling. So, without that understanding of philosophies or theories of architecture, uh, it would become difficult for one to resolve certain things. But once you master on that philosophies or principles, basically, you will be able to deal with any scale. It doesn't really matter. So you can scale up and down with utmost comfort if uh, you master on those aspects. So learning what you learn in college is very very valuable, and the trick is um, you need to connect those theoretical subjects, so to say, to your design practice. Say, for example, when you learn about theory of architecture or history of architecture or urban design or landscape design or climatology or ecology or so and so, you need to see how they are connected with my design subject. How can those subjects be fed into my design studio? So if you can start thinking about that, if you can start linking those theories or other subjects into your design subject, you will find it's extremely easy to understand and grab that problem, whatever scale it is, and easily resolve it. So that's the only way out, I would say. And there is another method where you just you just start doing something, whatever scale it is, and by repeating that you master on it. But that's a very lengthy process, and if we are not fortunate enough, we might not get that opportunity next time. So it I would say that's not a very a viable option always, but the easiest solution would be to master on your other subjects, which are the feeders for your design, and understand it very very well, so that nothing is small for you, nothing is big for you. In your head, you can cut across any spectrum, any scale. You can go up and down. It's a ladder, you just go up and down. So yeah, so I think if you can start thinking in that way, it will help you in a long run. It doesn't come overnight. You have to practice that, you have to think over that, you have to connect that mentally always, so then you will get it. Yep.
Sir, next question, sir. During the present days, many tiny houses have come up with the solution of transforming spaces through movable walls and partitions, etc. Do you think over the time more and more people would be interested in such spaces?
Okay, so it's a very interesting question, and to find the answer, you need to look at the global scenario. Now, across the globe, there are almost 8 billion people on Earth. And in India itself, we have around close to 1.5 billion out of 8 billion people. Now, okay, let's imagine India as a country, and you can figure out the geography of that. You can mentally visualize. So maybe 50 years back, Indian population was, I don't have the exact data or I don't recollect, maybe half a billion or 0.75 billion people were residing in India. Today, it has just doubled up. So that means we are encroaching into the land very, very fast. So one day, maybe 100 years down the line, in India, we will not have any open field at all. So in that scenario, of course, the shrinking is going to take place majorly. So the spaces are not going to be redundant anymore. And people will find very comfortable and adjustable within a very compact space. It reduces a lot of other aspects as well. But yes, constraint of space will increase and shrinking of space is inevitable. But at the same time, it will not be compromised in such a way that the basic functionalities are not met. If you need a 6 feet by 6 feet cot to sleep, you need that. You cannot escape from that. So likewise, if you need 2 feet wide by 2 feet deep chair to sit on for a whole day, you need that. So that will never reduce. But yes, the redundancy will go off. So the efficiency will be very, very high. And everybody sensibly and consciously working towards that across the globe. So in that process, a lot of convertible spaces are emerging, like the space what I showed in terms of Soho in my home, that is a convertible space. So yes, that is inevitable, and you have to plan it. And it is not very easy. Actually, it is a very difficult task to do that. You have to get into a detail of a nut and bolt literally, because when I'm sitting here in my Soho, I can see each and every joinery, each and every junction I can see, I can touch and feel, I can see how the bolts are, tightened. Are they all parallelly tightened or they are somewhere twisted half and half? So all these things will start hitting you. So you cannot leave any smaller detail for granted. So it's fun to do. It's definitely fun to do, but you have to be very attentive towards that. So yes, it is going to happen. Shrinking is going to happen over time, but very, very long time. And we need to be prepared. And the whole world has started preparing for that. So convertible space, yes, of course. We are going to see many, many of them in future.
Sir, one more question. Most of the projects that you have presented include staircases as being major gathering spaces. How do you think we can make them more barrier free? And would such places be ideal for them to hang out or utilize?
Yes, of course, you can make. So in the past, I have made many different kind of staircases, which I have not shared today. Uh, they are pretty wide. Some staircases are within the building. Some staircases are external. Some of them are just a passageway. Some of them become amphitheater or becomes a stage for something else. There are a lot of pause points in the middle of the staircases. I have added a lot of landings, wider landings in the staircase flights. So that becomes a place of gathering. And it's a very nice thing to do, um, because in a good building, you will always find there is a path and there are spaces all around that. There is a path and space relationship, and that path leads you to a certain goal, which is the major purpose of that built environment. So staircase invariably will become part of that path. So how you widen that path, how you shrink that path, how you elongate that path, how you make that voluminous, it's the play of that design aspect, and one must deal with that. And yes, staircase is fascinating. I think you will find staircase design in a very different kind of scenario across the globe for different kind of buildings. And yes, of course, you can make it barrier free by the means of widening it, creating pockets within that, and creating a space for people to sit down and encounter with each other in a positive way. And in an institution, especially, staircases are invaluable, and you must have many of them. And in many cases, it's very important to create a multiple routing. So, say for example, in your college, maybe you will have multiple staircases or way to go in and come out. So you will be staying in that campus for 5 years, and if you have to go through or walk through only on one path every day, so it will become boring, and it will create not new experiences for you. So if you have created different kind of routing, every day you can choose which way to go, which way to take. So that way also staircases and corridors helps a lot to create different kind of experiences. And straight away it kind of creates a connectivity, visual connectivity from different levels with each other. So that is also very important to get the sense of space and that proportion and scale. So yes, it's a very valid point and good observation. Yes, I love to play with that, and yeah, it's a constant process to evolve that and make it finer and finer and finer as day goes by. Yep.
So last question for the session. Do you foresee any changes in public spaces or buildings because of the COVID-19?
Yes and no, both. Uh, the true essence of public place is not going to change. It will remain same unless, as a human being, you and me start laughing or crying for the same emotion. The spaces are not going to change. So public spaces are not explored or designed or executed the way it should be, and that is what the problem is, which the pandemic is showing us very clearly. It's not that public place, the nature of public place has to change. It's not that. It's just that we do not have adequate amount of properly designed and executed public place. So that is the problem. So there is no problem with the definition of public place as such, or the characteristic of a public place as such. It's just that we need to have them plenty in number everywhere. So that is missing, and that is the problem what we are facing. And since this global crisis has happened, we are feeling it now, but it has been there for a long time, and only the sensible designers have been talking about it and practicing about it and doing something about it. But if you visit any sensible and good piece of architecture, you will find public place is properly designed and done, and they are fine and they will never change. The character of public place will never change. Only the quantum needs to change. The effectiveness of that needs to change. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for your unrelenting responses to all the questions.
Thank you.
Now I request Professor Neha to thanks.
Thank you, KP. Good evening, all. It gives me great pleasure to thank you all for being part of today's webinar. We are very grateful to all our honorable speakers, Sri K. Purushottam Reddy sir, Architect Avalikita Agarwal, Architect Srinath Vinay, Architect Rajiv Sharma, and Architect Suman Paul for their introspective sessions. Would also like to thank our Honorable Secretary, Srimati Vani Devi Garu, without whose support and encouragement, organizing the webinar would not have been possible. Srimati Ajita Shekhar, Director of Surabhi Educational Society, for motivating us. Our principal, Kamni ma'am, to have faith in me and give this opportunity to help in coordination of the event. Shiraji Reddy Garu for his relentless support and encouragement for this webinar, and Professor Sujit for all his support and patience. All my seniors and colleagues, a very special thanks to my colleague Professor Madhulika, Professor Charan, Professor Krishna Priya, Professor Ruma Kalla, and Mr. Shrikant for all their support and patience. Last but not the least, to all our dear students. Without their participation, this webinar would not have been possible. I have no doubt in my mind that this workshop would have been a unique experience for all of them. I thank them all for being a part of it. I would like to conclude by saying that we look forward to working with the good spirit and enthusiasm for further TRACE webinars. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity, and once again wishing everyone a very happy World Architecture Day. I, Professor Neha, signing off for today. Hope to see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suman.